Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the new strong and weak picks for patch 7.18. So we're going to be going over the most significant changes coming to this next patch and kind of take a look at how it's going to change the meta. We're not only going to go over the direct changes to the champions in 7.18, but we're also going to take a look at how those changes will affect other champions as well. So with that being said guys, let's get started. So the first change here we're going to take a look at is to Lucian. Now this change isn't super big, but I do think it will help him out a little bit. So what the change is they're changing the shield on his W from 40 to 60 at rank 1. Now this will help Lucian out in the early game for his first clear. And after your first clear on Lucian, you'll probably be around like 60 to 100 HP healthier than you would be in this patch right now. So it will give him a bit of a healthier clear, which will allow him to be a little bit more aggressive in the early game. It's nothing huge though, so I don't think this change is just gonna propel him back into the meta or anything. We're in a pretty heavy tank meta right now, and Lucian isn't the best in that, so this change will help him a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be a change that is gonna make him a super OP pick in this next patch. This next change here is to Lucian, and I think this is just going to make Lucian a very weak pick for this upcoming patch here, especially in the bot lane. So what they're doing is they're increasing his E's cooldown from 18 at rank 1 all the way up to 22, so a 4-second increase at rank 1, and that's really going to hurt his ability to like trade in the early game and his ability to just dodge skill shots in the laning phase. If you're playing bot lane Lucian in this patch right now, I don't even think he's that great of a pick, and especially for this next patch coming up, I probably would just stay away from Lucian in 7.18. This nerf is more targeted towards that mid lane Lucian though, so I don't really think for solo queue mid lane Lucian is even that great of a pick, but in this next patch, I think it's going to become even weaker here, so I would probably stay away from Lucian in 7.18. These next two changes here, we're going to take a look at them at once because we're going to talk about how these changes are going to affect the AD carry meta for this next patch. So the two AD carries, I guess besides Lucian getting nerfed in this patch here, are Kalista and Tristana. So Kalista's getting a cooldown increase on her ultimate by 30 seconds. So that's definitely going to affect Kalista's ability to snowball the early game. Her early game is her strongest point. So with this getting nerfed in this next patch here, it will bring her down in power quite a bit, and it will allow for the opponents to have a pretty good window of opportunity now to either look to engage on your support if they're playing a very squishy support champion, and if you don't have your ultimate off cooldown, then you're not going to be able to save them, and it will also just affect her ability to snowball if she is playing with an aggressive support. And then Tristana is getting hit with a pretty big nerf to her early game. So what they're doing is they're decreasing the AD ratio on her E from 110% at rank 5 down to 90%. Now you do max out your E first on Tristana, so a 20% decrease on the AD ratio there is definitely going to affect her ability to all in. And then on top of that, her ultimate is getting nerfed. It's going from 300 damage at rank 1 down to 250. So obviously here, these nerfs are targeting Tristana's all-in potential in the early game. If you're paired up with an aggressive support and you just want to try to all-in at level 6, then your damage is going to be significantly lower in 7.18. And I think that will hurt Tristana quite a bit because she does rely on getting like that fully maxed out E charge on the opponent and just using her ultimate to deal a lot of damage at level 6. So with that combo getting nerfed in this next patch here, I don't think Tristana is going to be as top tier as she was in 7.18. Now if we take a look at which AD carries will benefit from these changes and which will be the best in this next patch, I think that Twitch and Kog'Maw are going to stay like the two best AD carries in 7.18. And then an AD carry that I think is pretty sleeper right now is Jinx. Jinx hasn't received any nerfs in like forever. She's a champion that hasn't really been touched in a very long time, and a lot of other AD carries like over the past few patches have been nerfed, like Caitlyn with Tristana now and with Kalista, and just many AD carries getting nerfed. I think Jinx is going to be pretty strong here for 7.18. We are in a pretty heavy team fight meta right now. There's a lot of tanks being played that can lock down the enemy and just allow Jinx to get in there and get her reset. So I think she's a pretty viable pick in 7.17. So for 7.18 here, I'd definitely be watching out for her. And then if you are a Sivir player, I think she's going to be very good in this Tristana versus Sivir matchup in this next patch. It's very easy already in this patch for Sivir to shove Tristana under tower and deny her a lot of CS, because it is very hard for Trist to CS under tower with her E, and it's also very hard for Tristana to all in a Sivir, because if Sivir times her E correctly, then you can negate so much damage from Tristana's E and just her all in the early game. So if you are a Sivir player, I'd be looking to play this matchup because I think it's going to become even more Sivir favored in 7.18. The next change here we're going to take a look at is to Ryze, and Ryze, even though he is getting hit here with a pretty good buff in this next patch, he's in a state right now to where he's just such a weak pick that even if they do buff him pretty significantly, I'm not too sure it's really going to affect him that much, but he's getting a pretty good buff here to his W. The AP ratio is getting increased from 20% up to 60%. Now you have to keep in mind that this is a buff to an ability that is a point and click ability, so this is guaranteed damage that you're getting with Ryze now in this next patch. And it's a pretty significant buff as well, 20% up to 60%. It's a 40% increase in damage there, or in the ratio under W. So you're definitely going to notice that your all-in potential with Ryze come the mid to late game is going to be quite a lot stronger. I think that if you are an experienced Ryze player and you can play him well, then I'd be looking to reconsider picking him up in this next patch. But I still think that with the state he's in right now, he's sitting at like a 42 or 43% win rate. I don't think this change is really going to propel him back into the meta, but it's definitely a pretty interesting change coming to 7.18. Ivern is another champion getting some pretty decent buffs in this patch. He's getting a magic damage increase on his E. The base damage is getting increased by 10 at all ranks, and the AP ratio on it is also getting increased from 70% up to 80%. Now I think this is actually a pretty decent change for Ivern. I think he's actually pretty good in this meta right now already in this patch. He can rush Ardent Sensor, he can also get Athene, so the AP ratio increase on the damage from his E is actually not that bad at all. You'd think that since Ivern doesn't build a whole lot of AP previously, this buff wouldn't really matter too much, but you don't really go for an early locket anymore. You don't go for a super early redemption. You do get these items that give you quite a bit of AP in the early game. You get the Ardent Sensor and Athene, so this buff will help him out a little bit. If your support is not playing an Ardent Sensor support in this patch, or if your AD carry is just playing a very good hyperscaling AD carry, something like a Twitch, a Kog'Maw, or a Tristana, then I think Ivern's a great pick in this patch right now, as long as you know how to play him correctly. Now this next change here is very interesting because if I'm understanding this correctly, they're basically reverting the Fiora nerf they gave to her ultimate a few patches ago. So what it says here is Fiora gains Duelist Dance movement speed bonus, which is her passive, while near the target. So what this means is when you use your ultimate on Fiora, you're going to get that movement speed now, and it's going to scale with however much movement speed you get with your passive. So I think this is really going to help out Fiora in this next patch, because when they removed that movement speed from her ultimate, I definitely noticed that your ability to stick on a target decreased by quite a bit, and you weren't always able to just continually chase down the opponent and just get those kills and get those vital procs off. So I think this buff is really good for Fiora, and because we are seeing quite a few tanks being played right now in the top lane, Maokai is a top lane pick to where Fiora absolutely destroys. So for 7.18, Fiora is going to be a much stronger pick, as long as I'm understanding these changes correctly here, because this buff is going to help her out a lot for 7.18. And then with this change to Fiora, it will indirectly nerf a few top lane picks. So a few picks that Fiora does very well into are Galio, Kled, Jax, Camille, Maokai. Those 5 picks are going to get quite a bit weaker in this next patch. Fiora's a champion to where whenever she's in the meta, she usually does have a pretty high play rate. So your ability to blind pick those champions like Jax or like Kled is going to drop in this next patch here, and it's going to be a lot more risky to blind pick them if you're going up against a good Fiora player. So I would watch out for Fiora in this next patch, and I would definitely not really recommend blind picking Maokai top lane or Galio top lane in 7.18. So that is going to be all for the bigger changes heading into 7.18. If you guys do want to take a look at the smaller nerfs and smaller buffs to certain champions and items for this next patch, then I will leave a link down in the description below, but I'm not going to cover them in this video because I don't really think they're going to affect the champion too much and change the meta for 7.18. With that being said, guys, if you did enjoy the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have yet to already, and I will see you in my next video.